So just for context, even in 2022, 80% of children in Gaza were experiencing extreme emotional distress. So you can imagine now, 2 years into this conflict, the compounding impact of the trauma, the bombardment, the displacement. It's completely devastating for children and their families.
Welcome to the Higher Love with Megan podcast with me, your host, Megan Cooper, a trauma-informed therapist, life coach and disruptor of wellness norms based in Brighton, UK. This isn't another nice-to-have wellness podcast. Instead, this podcast seeks to redefine what it means to be well in today's world. Here, we challenge the status quo, seek to reunite wellness with social justice and improve accessibility, diversity and inclusivity within wellness and beyond. As a listener, you are not here to passively consume. Instead, you are an ambassador for real, embodied, societal and systemic change in the world. As your host, I stand for radical self-inquiry and being able to have those confronting but necessary conversations so that we can remember our collective humanity at this time. We're here for the revolution and you've got a front row seat. Thank you so much for being here today, Olive. It's really great to have this conversation with you.
No, thank you for having me.
So I thought we'd just start off just keeping it quite broad at the beginning, just to give people a little bit of context for the conversation, but really just an introduction to you, to your role at Save the Children and the work of Save the Children in general.
So I'm Olive and I'm the Protecting Children in Crisis Squad Lead at Save the Children UK. I've been working at Save for nearly 2.5 years now. And for anyone who doesn't know, Save the Children is a humanitarian child rights organisation operating in more than 100 countries worldwide. And we've been working in the occupied Palestinian territory since 1953 and have a permanent presence in Gaza where we deliver life-saving health, nutrition and protection support for children. And in the UK, we advocate and campaign on a range of different conflicts, ensuring children's rights and international humanitarian law is upheld by the UK government.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I had no idea actually that you've been in Palestine territories for as long as you have. I would love for you to provide an update on the situation and the work of Save the Children currently happening in Gaza.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to begin. Frankly, with Gaza, there is so much urgent need right now for children. The situation is horrific. It's the deadliest place in the world to be a child. And our colleagues in Gaza are telling us that right now is the worst it's ever been in the last 21 months. Over 19,000 children have been killed by Israeli forces since October 2023. No one has enough to eat. No one is able to find food. The entire population is on the brink of famine. It is apocalyptic. And what is so utterly heartbreaking is that this is entirely man-made and preventable humanitarian catastrophe. Children in Gaza are starving to death before our eyes after 5 months of Israel's siege and denial of aid. And now civilians are having to make the choice between starvation or gunfire at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation militarized aid distribution points. It is absolutely horrifying, and nearly 14,000 Palestinians have been killed. It's been reported by the UN trying to collect life-saving food and aid. And then currently the aid getting in, what little of it is allowed to be put into Gaza, is a drop in the ocean. And it just cannot meet the scale of need for civilians in Gaza at the minute. And on top of that, this year marked the 58 years of occupation of Gaza by Israel. And this occupation was found to be illegal by the highest courts in the world, the International Court of Justice. In terms of the work that Save the Children are doing, we have temporary learning centres for children. We're providing cash to families so they can buy food and other essentials. And we're providing communities with aid and services like clean water and food and hygiene products and mattresses. And we're delivering food kits to families with things like olive oil and chickpeas and tea and wet wipes. We have 2 healthcare centres and mental health support at our child-friendly spaces. But staff in our primary healthcare centres in Gaza are reporting that some breastfeeding mothers are actually asking for infant formula to protect their children if they are orphaned. And in the clinics, people are so thin, which is obviously a horrendous sight to behold. But these clinics with lots of babies are silent because the babies are so exhausted and so sick that they can't cry. And mothers who are arriving at our clinics hungry and exhausted and terrified that their babies won't survive. And these women are malnourished themselves and still trying to nourish their babies. Even our own staff are now wasting away from lack of food because markets are empty and there's just a daily challenge to try and find the next meal. So our staff are becoming visibly thinner. And over a year and a half into a crisis like this, we'd really expect to be fully operational at this point. So delivering aid to children and families who need it at scale, but instead we're being forced to operate in impossible conditions, and not enough aid is getting in to the families in Gaza. And so until we have that full and safe access, we can't provide the level of support that's needed.
It sounds just such an unthinkable environment for any organisation to be operating within and for anybody to be experiencing directly on the ground. Perhaps you could provide an update for the psychosocial support that I know that you're providing for children on the ground and also for staff on the ground as well.
Definitely. So just for context, even in 2022, 80% of children in Gaza were experiencing extreme emotional distress. So you can imagine now, 2 years into this conflict, the compounding impact of the trauma, the bombardment, the displacement, it's completely devastating for children and their families. They're suffering from anxiety, sleep problems, bedwetting, regression to earliest development stages, and chronic stress from prolonged conflict exposure can lead to lasting changes in children's physical health later in life. That's what makes these psychosocial support services that we're delivering so vitally important, and really incredible work that my colleagues are doing. It's also important to note that the staff delivering these services are going through the exact same situation as well in Gaza. They've experienced displacement, loss of family members, they're hungry. So it's even more impressive that they get up and go to work every day to deliver this support for their community. So it can look like different things. We run sessions on positive parenting for caregivers, so how to support their children and take care of their own mental health. They're being given that space. So some haven't been able to brush their hair or have a shower in weeks. So having these kind of sessions where they can get the tools and just a bit of space to look after themselves. And we also support children and teenagers to express their emotions and their needs and their hopes and wishes for the future. And it's done in a safe and supported private environment. And a lot of it is done through art and drawing, because that's how children can express themselves quite well and quite easily. So one activity that we do is called the Happiness Bag, and it's where children draw their dreams for their life. And sadly, at the moment, a lot of children are drawing food because they need to eat. So they're drawing chocolate, they're drawing ice cream, they're drawing juice with sugar because you can't get sugar anymore in the markets. And my colleague told me today that one of their facilitators told her he needed a break for a bit because a child in one of his sessions turned to him and told him that his dream was to eat a piece of bread. And he found that as a father himself, who's also trying to look for the next meal for his children at the moment, so painful and so difficult and just heartbreaking. Children are just sharing the horrors of their lives through art and through these drawings. We also have another activity called the Wishing Cloud. and children share their wishes. Previously, children were sharing wishes like, I wish to go to school, I wish for peace, I wish I could see my friend again. But then in the last few months, children were sharing that they wanted some food and some bread. But in the last few weeks, more and more children have been actually sharing that they wish to be dead, because in heaven and in paradise, where their mothers and their fathers are, in heaven there's love and there's food and there's water. So it's just shocking that we've got to the point now where children are wishing to die because of the mental toll that this conflict is having on them.
It's so difficult to even talk about, isn't it? The idea that's what people are experiencing, what small children are experiencing day in, day out, and something that I really hear within there as well. You know, we're talking about teenagers having workshops and expressing emotions and things like that. So at the end of the day, also, whilst you're going through this incredibly traumatic experience, it's also just children being children and dealing with all of the things that you or I or anybody else also would have experienced as a child growing up, as a teenager growing up. Wow, it sounds like incredible work that the organisation provides, but just the scale of it, I imagine, is such a challenge.
Mm.
Before we go on, I'd so appreciate you to hit follow or subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, click those 3 little dots next to settings to rate the show. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review, or take a moment to explore how you can rate or review on the platform that you're listening or watching. This makes a difference. I truly believe we need to have more of these conversations to shake up the status quo. We'll beat the algorithm together with your clicks and shares. Now back to the episode. I know that part of Save the Children's work as well is campaigning around Gaza, and I'd love for you to talk about details of campaign actions and calls to government that you are also working on.
So in terms of our campaigning, we are demanding that the UK government take urgent action for Palestinian children. And so far, they've unequivocally failed Palestinian children in Gaza and the West Bank. The UK has been an ally to Israel's atrocity in Gaza and the West Bank by approving the supply of British-made parts for F-35 fighter jets. They've provided diplomatic cover to the government of Israel, and they've failed to meaningfully hold them accountable. So we are asking that the UK government end its complicity in the horrors unfolding in Gaza and urgently suspend all arms sales to Israel, including the parts for F-35 fighter jets, given the clear risk that they might be used to commit violations of international humanitarian law. We want the UK government to hold all perpetrators accountable and end Israel's impunity, and we want them to take all possible steps to bring an end to Israel's unlawful occupation. Every single child's life is equal and precious, and the laws that exist to protect them are universal and non-negotiable, and the UK government is legally and morally obliged to always uphold them. So this failure to protect Palestinians stands in stark contrast to other contexts where the UK government is doing the right thing. And these double standards send a devastating signal that Palestinian children's lives simply aren't worth protecting in the same way as others. In terms of who we are targeting, obviously Keir Starmer and David Lammy are the key decision makers as the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary. But ultimately, Keir Starmer is the final decision maker, and we're looking to increase the pressure at the very top. And they have shifted in their language in recent months, and they've recognized that the situation is intolerable. They know the situation on the ground. They've seen the pictures, they've seen the images coming out of Gaza, but they're choosing still to supply the arms to Israel and take half-measured steps. But Palestinian children can't eat words or statements of concern, and you cannot call for peace whilst fueling war. It's enabling a cycle of destruction and despair. And what makes it even more surprising is that Starmer and Lammy are both lawyers. They both have legal backgrounds, so they fully understand the legal obligations on the UK government to take action in this moment.
Yeah. And is it right, I understand that building campaign strategies is a big part of your role. So your role is leading the Protecting Children in Crisis squad. Can you talk a little bit about your role and building campaign strategies within that as part of your role?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of our campaigning and advocacy, the country office in the occupied Palestinian territory has set the overall kind of strategy and direction and the asks. And then we in the UK kind of contextualize that and we create our own kind of influencing strategy for the UK government. So we're really looking for like opportunities and gaps in our own policy in the UK that will support children ultimately experiencing conflict. And we're looking at all of the different levers available to us, whether that's through private advocacy with the FCDO, working with MPs and ministers, getting media cut through with our messaging and our calls to action, or powerful social media and bold campaigns. And as part of our campaigning, we've done a lot of like public mobilization. The public have been so important in order to create the change that we need to see. So we've mobilized them on multiple occasions to asking them to sign open letters, write to their MPs, ask that their MPs attend specific debates and parliamentary briefings on Gaza to show that constituents care about this issue. We've also done lots of work to show that the government's quite out of step with the UK public on lots of our asks. The public have consistently supported, as polling has demonstrated, a definitive ceasefire, a full suspension of arms sales, and we even more recently polled the UK public around whether or not they believe that the government should be continuing to supply F-35 fighter jet parts to Israel, and it came back that a majority of the British public do not support the continued supply of British-made parts to drop bombs on children in Gaza. So we're really looking at different tactics to engage the public around our campaign. We do projections onto Houses of Parliament, onto Tower Bridge. We've mounted blue plaques calling out the government on the Houses of Parliament. And we've worked with children from diaspora communities in the UK to campaign alongside us as well. So yeah, lots of kind of deep thinking and creative tactics to try and achieve change.
And it's definitely encouraging to hear the changes in public opinion and public support that have been happening over the last couple of years. I'm just curious to ask, in terms of the biggest barriers to campaigns having impact?
In terms of Gaza, it's one of the most debated topics in Parliament at the moment. And it is unheard of to have as many questions and debates as we're seeing on Gaza. And it shows just how important public mobilization really is. We know that MPs are standing up in Parliament and speaking in such great numbers because every single day they are hearing from their constituents in their masses that they care deeply and that they're horrified by the inaction from our political leaders. And all of this pressure does add up, and the UK government is feeling that pressure from Parliament on Gaza. And in terms of what we know, like what works, we want to marry really powerful private advocacy and bold campaigning and working in coalitions. So speaking as one voice with other aid agencies and human rights organizations so that we can center the conversation collectively of our asks. But in terms of some of the barriers, currently the UK government does believe that it's doing everything in its power to hold Israel to account and that Israel's actions are unacceptable in Gaza and the West Bank. But we don't accept that. And in the case of arms sales, the partial suspension, they are not supplying weapons that can be used in Gaza. So they believe that they've satisfied their legal obligations. But by creating this carve out for F-35 fighter jet parts, they are complicit in the horrors unfolding. So that's the barrier that we need to overcome. And that's why we need action now.
Do you have any campaigns currently within the public space, open letters, things that people can be a part of at this time?
Currently, we have a petition that I would say please sign. It's directed to Keir Starmer and David Lammy, outlining the asks that I've spoken about just now. Write to your MP. They work for you. Request to meet with them. Tell them how you're feeling about the situation. And importantly, you can ask your MP to write to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to raise it with him directly. This is one of the most effective ways to ensure that the Prime Minister, who's the ultimate decision maker, knows the extent and depth of the public outrage and the expectations that the public has for the government to do everything they can to stop this unfolding. Keir Starmer is accountable to everyone as the Prime Minister. And it's also heartening to know that MPs have told us that they are receiving more and more messages from their constituents, and not just people who've been engaged on what's happened in Gaza for many years, but people who are right now becoming more engaged, seeing the horrendous photographs and testimonies coming out of Gaza, and who feel compelled to write to their MP. And it does make a difference. MPs do take notice when they start to receive more and more messages in their inboxes.
And something that I heard recently in regards to that is that it actually gives the MP a lot more weight behind them in order to then take something to their party, to Keir Starmer directly. The more letters that they have from their constituents, it's like the weightier their argument, which is something I always thought that, yes, writing to my MP would alert them to the things that their constituents are about. But I guess it's that validation that perhaps they require in order to be heard more within the party. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. It shows them, ultimately, they're accountable to their constituents. So if you can demonstrate that there's a groundswell of support for this issue in the constituency and that people care deeply about it, that will motivate them to go into Parliament and advocate strongly. So yeah, 100%.
And the campaigns that you outlined that Save the Children are doing, are those on your website, or how can people locate those?
They are on our website. I believe the petition for Keir Starmer and David Lammy is on our homepage right now, so it should be really easy for people to find and sign.
Are there any other additional actions that you could recommend for people to be taking at this time? How can people best help?
A great question. I would say continue to make noise to your family and friends about what's happening in Gaza. Continue to follow people and accounts and aid organizations on social media, repost what's happening, keep up awareness, and shine a spotlight on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep making as much noise as we possibly can on the daily, taking action together. Thank you so much for that. I'd love to speak a little bit too about your personal experiences of working within this sector, because, you know, I imagine that being part of an organization like Save the Children, it's deeply fulfilling, but also takes a lot of emotional bandwidth for a lot of people, and certainly a lot of challenges that I imagine must be present working within the organization, within the charity sector and this type of organization. I would love to just ask you a few questions about your experiences. So as a campaigner yourself, I'd love to know how you take care of yourself in a way that you feel is perhaps helpful for people to consider at this time.
So burnout is really common for campaigners. So it is so important to take care of yourself and your well-being in order to have that resilience and the energy and motivation to continue working on whatever issue you're advocating. And I think importantly, it's good to know when you need a break and when you need to just take a step back to recharge. For me, I always feel so much better when I put down my phone and get out into nature and move my body. I think the other thing is just having that strong sense of community. So who are the people that you're going to call when you want to hug or want to have a laugh or just relax? Having that kind of support system around you, be very important for for keeping up your own well-being.
When you said that it feels different for everybody when people need breaks, what does that feel like for you personally?
It can be a sense of overwhelmed. So if the news has been non-stop, there's information overload, more often than not, we'll just need a little bit of a break to clear my head and process what's happening, or just take a break entirely from thinking about an issue or a problem. Yeah, I'd say that's when I most often just need to take a step back.
Have you ever, or do you now, experience any type of kind of guilt around that? Because something that I hear from people is obviously witnessing what we are in Palestine, in other places around the world as well. I know a lot of people are very deeply engaged in following what is happening day by day. And I know a lot of people, and I also can feel this too, some guilt around removing yourself in order to take a break, because obviously people who are in a conflict zone or experiencing these issues directly don't get that luxury. So sometimes we can think that we must stay in it. Do you get a sense of guilt around taking a rest, or is that something that kind of the further along you've been within this work that you've managed to reconcile?
No, I'd say it's a position of privilege to be able to take a break from something if you're not experiencing it personally firsthand. So there's always going to be a sense of guilt and awareness that you're lucky that you can just have a break. And it feels particularly difficult when the news cycle is non-stop and things only seem to be getting worse week on week. Ultimately, I believe that change just takes such a long time to happen. And if you are going to be in something for the long run, then you need to figure out how to take care of your mental well-being. And it's an important part of having that kind of resilience longer term.
Totally. And the things that you mentioned of moving your body, going out in nature, do you use them a little bit more preventatively within your routine these days?
Definitely. I'd say that's like the main purpose of them. You don't want to get to burnout. You don't want to get to a stage where you're feeling terrible. So having those kind of moments for yourself during the week is really vital.
Yeah. It's such a good reminder, this. And even for myself, somebody that works within wellbeing, I still need these constant reminders. Literally, my WhatsApp group with friends this morning who are all deeply engaged with things that are happening deeply in action. We were all like, when was the last time you went to a yoga class? When was the last time you went to the gym? Okay, we need to start doing some more preventative work. So yeah, this is a very good reminder. Thank you for sharing that. When things feel particularly difficult for you, how do you keep going when change seems really difficult?
I think, as I just said, like change can take a really long time. And sometimes you don't even know that change is happening because it's happening behind closed doors. So you can't see it. But I think when it all seems really difficult, doing work that you can really believe in and stand proudly behind can motivate you to keep going. And also just working alongside like really brilliant colleagues that inspire me every day is amazing. And I think at Save the Children, we are clear that unless the laws and norms that exist to protect children are consistently upheld everywhere, they risk becoming meaningless and all children become less safe. So even though it's challenging at times to see small bits of progress or be satisfied with the kind of action that the government's taking, ultimately it's a change objective that I feel strongly about that achieve.
How long have you been within this kind of sector?
I have worked in campaigning now for quite a while. I don't even know how many years, but I used to work on gender equality. So working with girls and young women around the world. I've worked with refugees to fight for a fairer asylum system and with environmental groups. So I've worked with a broad range of people. And
the reason that I asked is that I was just curious, when we were talking about change takes time, and sometimes you don't even notice that the change is happening because it's happening very slowly and incrementally. And then you look back and suddenly it's 5 years, 10 years down the line, you're like, oh, we don't do that thing anymore. Something has shifted. I'm just curious, in the whole time that you have been in campaigning, would you say that there have been significant changes that have happened in positive ways that you recognize now? Would you say that change has been happening?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think even so, in the last 2 years, we were at a point, the previous government, so Rishi Sunak, where they weren't even calling for a ceasefire for many months. And it just became, after months of sustained public pressure and pressure in the media and in parliament, it became very normal that our government was calling for a definitive ceasefire in Gaza. And that is progress, and we should not forget that. Also, the arms suspension back in September last year, even though it doesn't go far enough and they made the carve out for the F-35 parts, is still progress and wouldn't have happened without the kind of determination and perseverance of so many campaigning groups and aid agencies and human rights organizations in the UK. There's always small bits of progress along the way that you can't lose track of. And actually, it's important to recognize them. Otherwise, it can start to feel all very bleak.
That's very reassuring to hear. But yeah, I guess it's an important reminder again, or for all of us, that the human brain is very good at focusing on everything that's wrong and all of the negative stuff that we're constantly presented with, which there is a lot of. But like you have just said, also reminding ourselves of these things that are happening alongside. Within the last couple of years, I think within the past 5 years, I think there's been also an increase with kind of community care, grassroots initiatives. You mentioned around community and importance of finding like-minded people also as part of that preventative looking after ourselves. So I guess also recognizing these things that are also happening alongside and celebrating those small, which also might be quite significant, wins as well. Is there anything that you would like to share? And also, I'm curious what brings you hope as an individual or as an organization?
I think it's unbelievable that we're nearly 2 years into this conflict. And right now, I just believe that this is a historic time that we're living through, and humanity is at stake, and we need to come together to demand greater action from our political leaders. The 1.1 million children in Gaza deserve a childhood. They deserve a future. And right now they're being failed by the UK government. International law, justice and human dignity are not optional. And speaking to my colleague Isra earlier, who is the mother of 2 children herself, she said, "We still have hope. We will never give up. We have no choice but to maintain hope and plant that hope inside children." She spoke of the beautiful moments her family had together despite the horrendous conflict raining down around them. And that's why people around the world and in the UK, including myself, can never give up.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that, especially hearing around what brings hope at this time. Thank you. For anybody listening who's wanting to connect more with the work of Save the Children, what is the best place for people to access information? How can people follow the work?
I would say if you ever want to take part in our campaigning actions, so like signing petitions, making a donation, you can head to our website and all of the information will be there. I'd also suggest following us on Instagram. We're on every social media platform and we regularly post updates as to what's happening in Gaza, how children are affected, and how you can take action and be a part of our campaigning for change.
Thank you so much for your time, and really just deeply appreciate the work of you and your colleagues and Save the Children in general. So yeah, thank you for everything that you do, and we're all right there with you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. It's great to have you with me on this journey towards higher love for all. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. Please do take a moment to rate and review the show, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. All links, references and contact information is detailed too within the show notes. And I always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with_Megan or via my website higher-love.com. Send your takeaways, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share or send on to someone else who would benefit. Until next time, big love.